Let's do it.
Hi, welcome back to the Robo Show. We're actually live now, which the Twitter handle makes sense, and we're at the Orlando Regional First Robotics Competition. I'm James Austin.
And I'm Gabe Salas.
Our show's a little bit different today, not just because it's live. It's 1:11 actually at the moment, just to prove that we are live and we're not faking it this time. We're going to have on-the-field reporters all through the elimination matches to give you more information, some behind-the-curtain stuff. That's going to be Dan Swando and Jonelle Greger. We're going to go to them now.
Hey Firsters, Janelle and Dan here. I'm going to be your field reporter out here on set. I'm going to get live updates from all the teams and give you some interviews as well. And Dan here, he'll be our technical analysis, weighing in on all the strategies and gameplay of each team. So you'll be seeing a lot of us, and we look forward to giving you updates.
All right, thank you very much, Jonelle and Dan. We'll be checking in with you throughout the show just to get a little bit more information from the teams. So Alliance selections just happened on the field, and a lot of interesting stuff happened. So you want to just go through it real quick?
Yeah, sure. If we could get an image of the bracket or not, that's fine. Just to let you know that we have a lot of interesting Alliance pickings. As you can tell, just a really quick look, first seed was Sigma Cats. They've actually deserved it to make it all the way to the top. I'm not saying it condescendingly or anything like that.
Yeah,
but
undefeated the whole time.
Exactly, and we thought that we were going to have a couple of tough matches. So I'm looking over the match list yesterday. But, I mean, they proved themselves to be up there, so.
All right, so tell me a little bit about their first pick, 1902.
1902 has been pretty consistent. They had a rough start yesterday, but today they've been very thorough with their shooting and especially with autonomous. So for the most part, it was a good, solid pick. They've been reliable, and they've been able to do defense as needed whenever they need to push their way through to score. So I agree with that pick.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a great pick. I happened to work with 1902 in the past as well, so that kind of affected my decision. Team 4707 was actually the third pick of that alliance. And tell me a little bit about them.
4707 has a pretty consistent autonomous. Not much is known about them, mostly because they're rookies. But considering the pickings that they had available left over, it was pretty good for them to pick them. So I agree with that as well.
So what do you think their main strategy is going to be during the competition?
For the competition, for the most part, I think they're going to go ahead and be very aggressive with their shooting. I think whenever defense needs to be played, they will. But I see 108 and 1902 tag teaming, and whenever one needs help, they'll go ahead and help each other out. So they're going to go in pairs to collect. They will also go in pairs to go and shoot.
All right, so do you want to go ahead and talk about the 8-seed alliance, who they'll be facing in the first match?
Absolutely. We have 744 Shark Attack, and they have notoriously been very defensive and very aggressive with their play, and we are going to expect that here in eliminations with them. They've been very consistent, and they deserve their spot as well.
Very cool. And tell me a little bit about 79, who was their first pick.
79 as their first pick. They've been hit or miss, throughout qualifying yesterday, but today they've been, hitting their marks as needed. So as long as they're lining up their shots, they are going to make them. And you'll know it because their shooter is pretty loud.
Yeah, it seems pretty powerful. The one or two times they missed over, it went right into the stands.
Absolutely.
1772 was the third pick of that alliance, and I believe they're from Brazil, actually, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Very cool. And they seem pretty right out of the gate at the regional on Friday. Their first couple qualification matches,
right.
Very, very good. I think that's because they were actually at another regional before this. I want to say it's Palm Meadow. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that one. But you could tell they've actually had the experience of a regional under the belt. They're a pretty good shooter from what I saw.
Yeah.
Their auto from the scouting data we have is a little bit hit or miss, but
right.
they definitely have that in the can. And I believe all three teams have 10-point hangers.
That's correct. All of them have 10-point hangers. So
right.
It'll be interesting to see end game results with these guys and see if any other teams, especially 1902 and 108, shutting other teams down.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a shootout in that first quarterfinal match.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go into the number 2 seed, actually. 125, the Alliance captain.
That's right. They're all the way from Boston, the Neutrons. So 125 has been working really hard on their autonomous. They've been working particularly hard on actually collecting like 2 additional discs off the floor and shooting them during autonomous. So we're hoping to see something like that during eliminations or something close to that.
Yeah, and they're a floor pickup exclusive robot, right? They don't go to the human player at all?
Not that I remember, no. So they've been really really wanting to pick up from the floor. But they've been having issues throughout all of qualifying picking up the floor. Hopefully they have that dialed in, and so they're going to be a really top contender.
All right, and tell me a little bit about the first pick, 44-51, the rookie from South Carolina or Georgia.
44-51 has been a very impressive rookie team.
Yes,
I
extremely.
mean, I've been looking at them more closely. This is their second regional. They were in Palmetto last week, and so even though they're rookies, the mentors have been veterans, you know, within the first community for quite some time. But the students themselves, this is their first rodeo, like literally. I mean, we interviewed them on Thursday, and we have snippets of them saying, you know, this is the big leagues. We're with big dogs now, and they were very intimidated. But to see them, you know, make it this far, they have much to be proud of.
They ran with the big dogs just fine. They were the #1 seed at the end of Friday, I think, right?
Absolutely, and they're a great team. I mean, they were able to consistently hit the 3-tier climb. And not only that, I've been able to dump a couple colored discs onto the top of the pyramid. So we're going to expect seeing that.
Yeah, that 50 points is going to be huge.
Yeah, and you're probably going to see that around the 45-second mark left on the clock when they're going to go ahead and start making that climb. But for insurance purposes, I'm pretty sure they're going to start a lot earlier.
Oh yeah, why not? And their last pick, 233.
I know.
Pretty. I know. They're a team. They're around. You know.
Yeah, they're well known. But 233 has not. You know, they haven't been getting their groove quite in yet, and they've been having issues, you know, collecting off the floor. There've been issues with collecting the disc into the magazine, and they haven't shot at all, you know, during qualifying. Yeah. So it's a little disheartening to see that much potential, you know, falter. However, they've been able to prove themselves solidly through qualifying matches today and playing very aggressive defense. And so we see them as that pick. Yeah. And to be honest, I'm really surprised they fell that much through on the Alliance pick.
That's right,
the way back up.
All the way back to the #2 seed on the second round. I mean, the second to last pick, 233. I mean, come on. What was the what was the Alliance that they went past that we thought?
They went past the 3rd seed Alliance.
Yes.
You want to look at them real quick? You can. And that's
Team
Swamp Thing 179, Team Moose, which is 1065, as well as
Team 21.
Team 21. And when we looked really closely at 21 and 233, and they're both almost identical in statistics at this moment.
Really?
They are. The only difference that we noticed was probably on fouls. The pink team actually had one more foul from what we gathered than, you know, Team Combat. So I guess that was the deciding factor for that alliance.
Apparently, and hopefully they'll be able to. Hopefully it works for them. I mean, I'm interested to see it play out. It should be an interesting couple matches.
Absolutely.
So we already talked about the #2 and 3 seed. How about the #4 seed, 39-32, the Alliance captain?
39-32. For them, I mean, the teams there at this point now, we're starting to see them almost as well-rounded as each other. So it's really hard to discern each of the other teams from each other. And you know, and it's bad when I say this, but it's hard to discern one from the other, and because not one team truly stands out among the other ones.
Yeah, it's such a. I mean, it is. I mean, they're the middle alliance, but they are all consisted of very solid teams. I mean, they can normally shoot pretty well. They can hang for 10 at least, but none that really jump out. And it'll be interesting to see the 4th and 5th alliance as they play through to kind of see wwho rises above the pack in that middle ground.
And what's critical about when you look at the 4th and 5th seed alliance, that's 39-32, and then the team alliance captain for 5th alliance, even the 6th. Now looking at this, 35-56, 31-64. I mean, they're probably not used to being in alliance selections and pickings at this moment. So we noticed that during alliance selections, when it came down to that second pick, we have teams cheering for their names to be called out in the stands. So it might have been very nervous for the crew that was out there and looking around and trying to figure out which team to pick for their elimination rounds.
I'm sure. It's even more reason to say that scouting is incredibly important at these competitions. I mean, you have to know who to pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's quintessential. You need a game plan before you go in, especially here in eliminations where you lose twice. That's it. You're gone. Yeah. So you got to win.
Fantastic. All right. So what do you expect to see in these elimination matches? I know we talked a little bit about the specific ones, but overall, is it going to be, do you think mainly shooting is going to be the game changer, or is the hanging really going to change it?
And that's a really tough call to say because the majority of these teams heavily rely on the human player load station.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't see a lot of teams at this regional picking up from the floor, with the exceptions of some teams. and that actually gives them at a good advantage over a lot of the climbers. The majority of the climbers that we see here at this regional are going to be typically 10-point climbers. There are a couple that are specialists, like 179, 4451 to name a few, that they'll climb up more than the first tier on the pyramid, but they have that ability where they could dump a couple of discs into that pyramid, and that definitely changes the pacing of the game.
Yeah, that's going to be big, and actually it's going to be crucially important for all these shooting teams, especially the ones that are equally well matched, to get back to that pyramid and get those 10-point hangs. I mean, we take it for granted because it does seem to be one of the easier tasks this year.
Yes.
But I mean, you have to be at the pyramid before the top buzzer goes, and I mean that's for some teams when they're distracted with trying to shoot and getting around the field. I think it's going to be difficult, and I think we're going to see a lot of teams who can hang for 10 miss their opportunity because they just never got back in time.
Absolutely, and there are certain climbers that they'll spend the majority of the match setting up, lining up, and going for that third tier climb, which is very admirable. But there are several times during qualifying where they don't latch on properly, or one of the two hooks doesn't just hit the bar the right way, and we see them dangling.
Yeah.
And that's scary enough as it is, and especially here in eliminations where you have turnaround time very quick from one match to another. Your timeouts are going to be very critical, especially there.
Yeah. Also, what do you think about the robots that, for instance, the ones that take a little while to climb up to the 30-point hang?
Yeah.
What about the shooters that are shooting from the pyramid in that time? I mean, are the one team, the Ninjaneers, climb at the front of the pyramid?
That's right.
Is there a risk at all of driving under them or around them to get your shooter
and that's
going?
a great point you mentioned, because a lot of teams, when they go ahead and start climbing, you want to give them as much room as possible, just in case they do falter or fall. And we're not saying for a liability issue on one team, but for two teams to get hurt on the same incident, you want to avoid that as much as possible.
There is one backup robot available for each alliance, but if you lose two robots in one incident, yeesh.
Yeah, and I haven't even bothered to take a look at who would be the backup bots.
Oh yeah, I haven't either. We'll have to come back with that stats.
Well, you definitely don't want to rely on that backup robot during elimination.
No, not at all.
Absolutely
That is not the situation you want to be in. Let's talk a little bit about the whole elimination bracket, how it's going to be working out, and a little bit of the rules that are behind it, because people who aren't familiar with first, or this is their first or second competition, might not be as familiar. So what's going to happen first is we're going to go through the quarterfinal matches. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the quarterfinal matches, which is going to be number 1 seed versus number 8 seed, number 2 versus number 7, 4 versus 5, and then 3 versus 6. Then we'll progress to the semifinals and finals as we go through, depending on who wins. During these elimination matches, each alliance captain, has 1 5-minute timeout. Now, when would a situation arise where a timeout is necessary or a good idea?
When would that arise?
No, when is usually the best time to take it? Other than, I mean, obviously when your robot isn't working.
Yeah, usually, what you'll see teams do is they're going to go ahead and they're going to work on the robot in between, their matches. There's going to be a cutoff point where they're going to have to go up to the referee and say whether they're going to declare that timeout. So they're going to wait all the way to the last minute on that cutoff time. And the head ref typically, especially at championship levels, aren't going to go out of their way to go to the team or the team alliance captain and say, hey, do you want a timeout, yes or no? If you miss that cutoff point, you got to play. You got to play. So usually the team alliance captain will just go ahead, wait next to the head ref, hang out, chit-chat them, and wait for the okay or the go, no-go from the team, whether you go ahead and accept that timeout or not. And that usually extends it just a little bit more than the 10 minutes because you have that buffer in between matches.
Definitely. And the one thing that I really kind of recognize as you get into elimination matches, and what some people don't know, normally during the qualifying matches, in between matches, teams have time to bring the robot back to the pits, fix anything that's wrong, and deal with situations. That doesn't happen in the elimination matches. It's once you get to the field, you're there until you're eliminated or you win.
Right. With
one being slightly more preferable than the other. How critical are those pit crews that you bring to the field with you? I mean, how much work is it to fix your robot not in the pit?
Absolutely. It's another challenge, and so usually teams will have their carts set up with all the spare parts that they think they're going to need during eliminations. And usually you want to hope that the main structures of your robot are able to withstand the beating that's going to happen during eliminations. And even though it's bumper to bumper, those impacts, and I don't know if you've seen some of the images that some of these teams put.
It's getting rough here.
I mean, they put these GoPro cameras on there, and even though the slightest impacts, that camera is vibrating like crazy. And so I just can't imagine, being a robot. I mean, that first-person point of view from the robot angle is super cool. I want to be a robot. It is
That's
awesome.
really all why we're here. We really just want to be robots.
One day that'll happen.
All right, what are some of the considerations? Because you've worked with Pink for a little while, and Pink has a tendency to be in elimination matches. What's the experience like while you're going through an elimination match for either the drive team or the people on the field? Like, how much of a drain is that?
It's draining, but the best advice for any team is take it one match at a time. You know, if you focus too much ahead on finals and not in your most immediate match, you're going to get eliminated in quarterfinals. Done deal. And you don't want that situation to arise. So focus at the task at hand, one match at a time, and just support each other. That's the best thing you can do.
Definitely. How vital is, because we've talked about how the robots complement each other.
Yes.
How vital is it for the alliances to work together as drive teams or as pit crews?
It's absolutely critical. It's cooperate or die. I mean, that's how important it is. And when you look at the alliance selections, you want teams not that just a high, ranked high, because it's a misnomer. You want to see how each team, each robot complements each other alliance and partners. So you may or may not agree with some of the alliance pickings from these teams and a little bit dumbfounded, but they may go by a different criteria than we expect. And so we're just going based on qualification behaviors on these teams and these robots and what they've actually been able to perform at this regional. And maybe they'll have a different strategy in eliminations. Maybe they have something differently in mind, and they're going to tell a robot that normally scores to play D for some odd reason. And some teams do that just to mix it up, just to throw off the other alliance when it comes to strategy and scouting. So you're going to see that, hopefully, in eliminations. And I want to put some money out. I'm going to go ahead and say in the 5th seed alliance, with 35-56, team 180, as well as 34-10, 180 has been on and off. And
yeah, they're a bit spotty right now. I think they were trying to get their full court shooter. They were focused so hard on that full court shooter, trying to get that to work, and it just hasn't panned out for them.
Exactly, and they, again, like a lot of the other teams that are here now, they're not hitting those marks that they need to. And if 180 hits those marks, they're going to be a very tough alliance to beat. And particularly what I'm talking about is that long distance sniping shooting.
Yeah.
They've been able to hit it during qualifying, but again, it's hit or miss.
It's very hit or miss. I mean, a lot of times they'll go up to the human theater station and they'll get stuck in their slot.
That's
and they're just stuck shaking around, and then they have to call it.
They waste so much time, shaking the robot, jostling around, getting that funnel to work with the discs getting loaded in. And on top of that, the way that their shooter's designed is a straight shooter. And at long distance, they don't have enough of that, angular torque spinning around on that frisbee. So what ends up happening is as soon as that frisbee flies out of that robot, it's curving.
Yeah.
And we've seen it hit that pyramid
cool.
a few times.
Yeah.
And so
it'll be interesting to see. And based on that, do you think they should try to stick with getting their full court strategy working, or should they just go to their normal backup strategy, shall we say, of just pick them up off the ground, run to the pyramid, and shoot them in close range?
I would much prefer to play it safe at this point, at least during this part, because I don't want them to waste a lot of time and then have that point spread make the difference. And what's going to come down to that is autonomous. If they're leading significantly ahead on autonomous, they may want to go ahead and start practicing that long distance shooting, but if they're not getting it by the end of quarterfinals and even semifinals, I wouldn't even bother at this point.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you mentioned autonomous. Let's go ahead and talk about how big of a role that seems to have been playing in the early weeks of these regionals. I mean, each disc in autonomous is worth double, so if you get your 3 in, you're already, it's an incredible advantage if nobody else in the other alliance scores any discs.
Absolutely, and what's interesting is looking over the rough data. A lot of these teams that do have an autonomous modes end up hitting them percentage-wise a lot higher than their tele-op, and it's because of how valuable those points are.
That's true, yeah. Teams have definitely put the time in to get their programs right and make sure those discs go in. How much of an effect do you think the consistency of the discs is to the, not ease, but relative consistency of the autonomous scores? I mean, it seems that in the past, teams have tried with the proof balls or something like that, and things kind of phase in or out, and they go in. It seems that if you hit one disc in an autonomous, you're going to get the rest of the discs.
Absolutely, and most of these are rapid fire shooters. It doesn't take less than a second to cycle the next discs and fire it onward. But that's also a double-edged sword. If you miss that first shot, the other ones are all going to go gone, and you might have to see the last-minute corrections, and that's when we tend to see discs fly out of the field, left or right.
All right, it looks like action's happening on the field again.
All right, so we'll go ahead back to what's on the field.